Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mastering Your Meals. This is session 2 of a 4-part session, and today we are covering kitchen skills and appliances. My name is Megan Jasperson, and I work for Purdue Extension in Perry and Spencer counties. I have my colleague here with me. I'll let her introduce herself to you as well.
Hey everybody, Megan Brothers. I am the Health and Human Sciences educator in Vanderburgh County.
Okay, and so today Megan and I are going to be tag teaming and covering lots of different information. We are going to review basic equipment that is typically used in the kitchen and some really good things for you guys to have if you don't already. And then we're going to jump into exploring a few gadgets as well and show you guys how to use those. Lisa, we are going to be showing you guys 2 separate handouts today that Lisa will send out. But if you'd like those directly from us after this session, you can just put your name and your email in the chat and we'll make sure to get those to you. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can jump in. Okay, and today we thought we'd start with the basics and then work up to the gadgets. So, a couple things that are really good to have when you think about basic cooking from your home. You want to think about having things to be able to mix things in. So basic bowls, several different sizes are good, spoons, spatulas, and whisks. And when we talk about, cutting things, we're going to go in depth. I'm going to show you guys a couple knives and demonstrate how to use some of those. But it's good to have a variety of knives, multiple cutting boards, as well as a can opener. And then your basic cookware, skillets, saucepans, pots and pans, stock pots, and casserole dishes. These are all things, you can have multiple sizes of these. Casserole dishes are good to have like 9x13s and then smaller ones depending on what you're making. Obviously pot holders for safety. Baking sheets, I love a good sheet pan meal that you can just throw everything in and pop it in the oven, or for things like baking cookies. Food thermometers, I'm going to circle back around and touch on the importance of that and why you should have one of those and use it. And good to have spatulas just for flipping and basic cookware. When we talk about measuring, of course, you want to have your basic measuring spoons, and there is a difference between dry measuring cups and liquid measuring cups, and I'll highlight one of those for you as well. When we think about draining things, it's important to have colanders and slotted spoons. They also do make saucepans, which I'll show you in a moment, that do have like slotted lids that can assist with draining as well. Those are super handy to have. And then things that you don't necessarily absolutely have to have, but Megan and I thought were great extras that we both utilize a lot, are blenders, rolling pins, a stock pot, which is a larger pot, cooling racks, muffin tins. You can make a lot of different things in muffin tins besides just muffins. If you're interested in exploring that further, do a little Google search on muffin tin meals. You'll be able to, you can do meatloaf, you can do eggs, there's tons of stuff. So more versatile than just muffins. A slow cooker, which is one of my absolute favorite appliances that I use the heck out of, and I'll show you guys a few differences in slow cookers momentarily. Some tongs for handling food, and then mixer just for mixing ingredients. So these are some really basic things that we think are staples. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just show you guys a few things. So we talked about measuring cups, dry versus liquid. There is a difference. This is a liquid measuring cup, and you can see that these are typically clear. They're either plastic or glass, and they have the measurements on the outside. And you can see through that just to measure liquids to make sure that those are accurate. And then it typically has a spout to dump, whereas dry measuring cups they measure the exact amount that you need. And so it's a little bit easier to dump those dry ingredients in. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight, we talked about a saucepan. I have a set in various different sizes, like I said, with a slotted lid that I just love. And these are great. They are different than skillets. Skillets are shallower and used on the burner. These are good for holding more volume and a little bit different than your bigger stock pots. So It's really good. You can buy these in various sets that have multiple sizes. So it's good to have a couple of those on hand depending on what you are making. Okay. So a few things that I really want to highlight. I believe, Megan, you said it is Food Safety Month this month. And so I want to talk through a couple basics when you're in the kitchen. Obviously, before you start prepping, you always want to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. But one thing that's really big, we mentioned food thermometer on our list. If you don't have one of these in your home, you should get one. Get a good food thermometer. They're not that expensive. Make sure that it is calibrated correctly and use it, okay? And a lot of the times these will have cooking, recommended cooking temperatures on the actual thermometer that you can use, but color is not always a great indication of doneness. So just by looking, you can't necessarily tell if some of your meats or other foods that you're cooking are done. So you want to make sure to insert your food thermometer and make sure that that food is cooked to the proper temperature so we can avoid foodborne illnesses. Another thing that I want to highlight when we're talking about food safety is having multiple cutting boards, okay? And these come in all shapes and sizes, but we really want to stress that you should designate one cutting board for your meats and stuff that has raw meat juices, and then a separate one for produce or any non-meat items, just so we can really focus on avoiding cross-contamination. Okay, a few other things that I want to demonstrate for you guys before Megan jumps into gadgets are knife sets that you can have at your home. Now, I have this one. This is fairly common. You can get these, go to Amazon. You can find a decent knife set for probably under $50. And this is just a basic kitchen starter set. I want to highlight a few things that are in here and talk to you guys about the differences. So this is a basic chef knife. Typically these run anywhere from like 6 to 14 inches. They do not have a serrated edge. These are a straight edge. These are really great for cutting things like meats, some of your harder, larger vegetables, and then for chopping and slicing things that are harder like nuts. Or any other products similar to that, as well as herbs. If you guys have a garden that you're growing herbs in, you want a good sharp edge to be able to dice and slice those up. Your chef knife is going to be your go-to for that. And Megan's throwing a couple links in the chat box that you guys can access for some additional information on some of these things. And so feel free to click on those or save those for later use. Okay, next knife I want to highlight. This is a smaller knife, very basic. You should have one of these. It's a paring knife, okay? These are typically 3 to 4 inches. Sometimes they can run a little bit smaller or a little bit larger, but these are super versatile, great to have in your kitchen. These are really good for doing more intricate cuts and doing things like peeling, smaller fruits and vegetables, cutting up of smaller fruits and vegetables. I'm going to demonstrate the proper way to cut an onion in a moment. I'm going to use a paring knife for that. And so you can really do a lot of things with these. You can de-seed with these. So really want to encourage you to have a variety of knives to choose from. And finally, serrated edge knives. So these come in various sizes. I have multiple in this set. You can see serrated just means that they are toothed, okay? So if it has teeth, these are typically used for things that have a tougher outside and a softer inside, that you can pierce the outer and then do it with a back and forth sawing motion to cut. So an example of something you might use a serrated knife for is tomatoes or bread, things that are a little tougher on the outside, but then you want to be able to utilize that sawing back and forth motion on the inside, okay? And so what I'm actually going to do today is demonstrate for you guys the proper way to cut an onion and show you how easy it is if you have good sharp knives. Okay, I know I've been places, I've gone to friends' houses for dinner and been helping them prepare, and they hand me the dullest knife in the world and say, chop these onions. And I'm like, oh my goodness, the job is so much easier if you just invest in good knives, and they're not super expensive. So I'm going to demonstrate this for you guys, like I said, with a paring knife. And so what you're gonna start is you're gonna trim the stem end of that onion off so you have a nice flat layer. And then place that flat side down and just cut it right in half. And then you are gonna peel that outer layer of the onion to remove that dry skin. I'm just gonna demo one half for you guys today. And then you can cut off that root end. And again, like I said, very easy with a nice sharp knife. And when you're cutting, this is something that a chef taught me very early on when I began preparing food. You always want to have cupped fingers, so we avoid slicing any fingertips off. I'm sure that the emergency rooms see many trips because of improper knife use. So make sure that you're cutting, and then just have that sharp knife and utilize your fingertips to hold that onion straight and cut it to the proper size that you want. When you get down to a place where you're running out of room, flip it over on its side, chop again. Okay, and you can return to that and cut those up as large or as small as you need, but this is something we thought would be great to demonstrate because a lot of recipes start with chopping an onion, and super easy if you have a good sharp knife. If you don't, it's more of a struggle. You're risking more of injury to your fingers and those sorts of things. So we would definitely want to avoid that. Okay, and then one of the other things that I wanted to show you before Megan jumps into her gadget, like I said, crock pots are my absolute favorite thing. I work full-time. I have a spouse that works full-time, and so when we're not in the midst of a pandemic and we're not at home, we're gone a lot. And it's really nice to come home to a meal that is warm, that you have just thrown together in the morning. And so there are several different types of crock pots. You can buy them in various sizes and shapes. And I'm gonna show you two that I have today. This is a very basic one. It's much smaller. It just has 3 settings. It has your off switch and then keep warm, low, and high. Very basic, a simple dial. There's no special gadgets and gizmos for this one, but it gets the job done. It's a little bit smaller, so if you have a meal that you want to throw something small in for, that works great. Here's my Mac Daddy crock pot and my absolute favorite appliance that I have in my kitchen. I use this all the time. This one is programmable, so it has various settings. You can see you can turn it on high for 4 hours or 6 hours. You can turn it on low for 8 hours or 10 hours, and then it automatically kicks to a keep warm setting. And so if my husband and I are both gone for 10 hours a day, we know that we can throw something in the crock pot in the morning. It will flip to keep warm. It's not going to fry it. It's not going to disintegrate the food that we have in there. It's going to cook it to the right temperature and keep it warm all day so it's ready to eat when we come home. Okay, that was Crock Pot 101, and Meg is going to show you a few additional gadgets and gizmos. And let me share my screen again just for a quick run through before she jumps into that so you can see what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so Megan's going to talk about the air fryer as well as a food processor and how that works. She's going to talk about some of the differences between crock pots and an electric programmable pressure cooker. These have been wonderful and hugely popular lately. And then also talk a bit about a spiralizer and show you guys or tell you guys about that one and how handy that is. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Megan.
Yes, thank you, Megan. Okay, so I have, obviously if we did this in person, we would be like making you food and everything would smell wonderful and amazing, but we can't. So I'm just going to show you guys kind of the basic functions of some of these more popular kitchen gadgets. We are not promoting any specific brands. These are just happen to be ones that I have. So this is what I'm sharing with you guys. And it'll help you if you, so what I've seen is people might have been gifted an Instant Pot and they're kind of scary and a little intimidating. So most people have them still in a box, or maybe they got it out, they just don't know how to use it, or they're just uncomfortable with them. So hopefully I can share just enough information with you guys that if you already own them, some of these appliances that you'll actually be motivated to use them. Or maybe if you were interested in maybe getting one and you just weren't quite sure, you know, coming into the Christmas season is going to be a good time to start looking for sales on some of those things. So one of my favorite kitchen appliances that I use a lot. So Megan Jasperson loves her crock pot. I use mine some, but not nearly as much as I should. But I do use my air fryer a lot. And I actually have two different kinds. So I brought one to show you guys. This is kind of the basic. This is kind of a Mac Daddy, but this isn't even the biggest that they make. But this is just a basic air fryer. I also at home have one that's kind of toaster oven like. So it looks like a toaster oven, but it has an air fryer capability, and I probably use that on a daily basis. But the air fryer itself is really, really easy to use. If you like the fried food flavor, then this is definitely a worthwhile investment, because this gives you a fried food flavor without the fried aspect. So you actually don't use oil when you use an air fryer, or if you do, you use very, very little. But most air fryers have some kind of basket, and usually to make them easier to clean, the baskets can come out. So and it's usually slotted, and then this is kind of the like catch-all tray here. But really, you can put the food in here. If you have like frozen French fries or chicken nuggets or anything like that, you can throw them in here and get them fried. It gets them really nice and crispy on the outside. But you can use this to fry zucchini. I actually use my toaster oven air fryer a lot for like chicken, because I like the taste of that crispy chicken without all that having to deep fry it. So it gets it really nice and crispy. And the knobs, you can turn the knobs to have different temperature controls based on the different foods. There's a lot of different models, a lot of different ways that you can use them. So if you get one, make sure to read your manual. But then there's a ton of recipes out there on air fryer this. I actually made donuts the other day, which was kind of fun. I have a 2-year-old, so we try to come up with fun things. Not healthy, but still like fun, right? But they weren't deep fried. So basically I used the canned dough and made them, used a cutter, made donut holes and donuts, and then threw them in the air fryer, and they came out real nice and crispy. And then we put, our flavoring on them. Super easy to use, but you're cutting out all that extra oil, which is really, really fantastic. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys the Instapot. So this is another one, like I said, we actually, if you're interested, we do have like a full hour class on how to use an Instapot, because they are a little bit, I don't want to say complicated, but there's some, trial to them. If you own one, absolutely get out your manual and read it. They're not as intuitive, but also with some of these too, you want to be able to actually utilize it for what it can be used for. So sometimes there's features on them that you can do way more with them than what you thought. So a lot of the models come with an ability you can brown in the Instapot itself. So you don't have to, like, if you're making a big roast, for instance, usually if you make roast at home, you have to brown it and then put it in the pan, and you get a whole bunch of stuff dirty and a whole bunch of dishes. And with some of the Instapots, they will actually do the browning for you, and then you can actually cook them in the pot itself, which is a really nice feature if yours has that. But the Instapot is great as a pressure cooker. So think of like the old school pressure cookers. This is like the new advanced version of that. It's also a safer version. So some of the pressure cookers of old were a little bit unsafe because they could potentially blow up. This could potentially blow because there's pressure. It's a pressure cooker, but it's very unlikely that there's a lot of extra safety features. So you'll have to try really hard to get this thing to blow up on you. But it's great to cook rice in. It's great. A lot of people hard boil eggs in them because it's real easy, really fast. Soups are really great to do in an Instant Pot. Think about things that you would do in your slow cooker, and your Instant Pot can do it sometimes faster than if you had your slow cooker. Another great thing about the Instant Pot is that you can put frozen food in them. Last week, if you were on with us last week, or if you watched the recording, I emphasized that we do not put frozen food in the slow cooker, that you need to thaw it first. The Instant Pot, though, will get food hot enough, quickly enough to where it can cook frozen food. We still recommend you thaw it, but if you are totally in a pinch and you need to get something cooked fast, then you can use the Instant Pot. An important consideration is that the way that this works is when you seal it up, when you put the food in it, it usually has some kind of bowl of some kind that you put in, and you put water in it, and always follow the recipes that are made for an Instant Pot. So you're not going to use the same amount of liquid as you would in a slow cooker. So make sure you are either looking up a recipe specifically for your Instant Pot, or you're looking up how to make my roast in an Instant Pot. So that way you're getting the right kind of liquid. Not enough liquid and it's not going to build up the steam. Too much liquid and it could potentially cause issues with it not either leaking out or not getting to the right level, not working too well. So make sure you get the right amount of liquid in it. But once you close it up, the thing to remember is that you want to make sure it builds pressure. So the cooking time itself is going to be less than if you were cooking like in a slow cooker or even in an oven, but you have to add that pressure time. So you have to wait for it to build pressure, and then it cooks, and then you have to wait for the pressure to release. So they recommend about 10 to 15 minutes to add to your cooking time. But in general, it is easier and faster than using a slow cooker or the oven. And you're using less electricity than an oven if you do an Instant Pot, because you're not heating up your oven and then using all that electricity that way, or gas that way. So basically what it does is it builds up pressure and gets the temperature really high. That cooks it faster because the temperature is higher, and usually can cook it a little shorter amount of time. And then you wait for it to depressurize, and then you have a cooked meal. So like I said, soups and stews and meat is really great to cook in it. Eggs are really great to cook in this. Rice is great and easy to do. So kind of a funny story. I had a class where I was doing this, and one of the demo recipes was oatmeal. And I'm like, why would you cook oatmeal in a pressure cooker? So we did, and it took like 45 minutes to cook oatmeal. Like, so some things are great to cook in the Instant Pot, and other things probably not. It'd probably be better to cook them regular methods. So just try it out. If you own one, try them. They're really nice and handy to use. And they make delicious meal. I think my colleague's mom makes incredible meatloaf in hers too. So it's real easy and simple to do. Okay, food processors. So there's a couple of different ways. So you can use a blender a lot of times to blend your food, but food processors are another really handy gadget that people, like if you're like my mom, it sits in her cabinet because she doesn't know how to use it. So she takes way too much time chopping things when she could just throw it in her processor. So a lot of food processors this is a very basic model, but it has the canister, it has the lid, and it has a single blade. A lot of other food processors have multiple kinds of blades in them, which makes it really nice to do a lot of things. You can do slicing instead of just chopping. But like this food processor is just gonna give you a nice chop, a real quick chop of things. So like onions, I hate chopping onions. I always get really cryy when I do it. So I like a food processor because I can throw my onion chunks in there and it'll dice them up really nice and fine for me. So that is one model for the food processor, but I also have one of these, and I think this is really super fun. It's basically a handheld food processor, but it's a smaller one, so it's not real big, but it has the single blade. But it also has handheld thing right here, so this connects to the top, and it turns it on. But I also like it because it also has an attachment for an immersion blender, which if you've never used one of these are amazing if you're making like creamed soups. I just made potato soup the other day and I wanted it a little bit creamier. So I use the immersion blender. And so you just stick this in there and it blends it all up. So you don't have to worry about like transferring it into a blender. You can use the immersion blender for lots of different things. I used it to make applesauce too. just makes the process easier. And I like this because it has multiple attachments in the same thing, which is really nice and handy to have. The last thing is the spiralizer, and I forgot mine at home, of course, but those are like really popular. And if you like the idea of having like zoodles, like zucchini noodles, or making anything into like fun noodles, it's kind of the rage right now. A spiralizer is really easy. They can come from like really inexpensive models to really, really fancy tabletop extensive ones. And on that handout, you can see they range anywhere from like $20 to over $100. But they're really nice ways that you can make thicker foods, vegetables into basically a noodle format. And they're really easy to do, really fun to use. If you don't have one, those might be a fun investment to make all kinds of fun things into different kinds of noodles. So with that, we did a really quick intro to lots of different kinds of food appliances. So what questions do you guys have about them?
Feel free to put any questions in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself. And as you're thinking of questions, if you have any, one plug that I did want to put in is that we talked about some really basic gadgets, and there are tons and tons and tons of things out there. I do want to caution you about getting really excited about a gadget that maybe only does one thing and then sits and collects dust in the back of your cabinet. I know that I have several of those that I really either need to like just get rid of, that I was gifted for a wedding gift 10 years ago and have never used. Some of them are great if you latch on to some of the, like if your family makes waffles all the time, great, get a waffle maker. But just be cognizant of that as you're filling up your kitchen space with appliances as well. I always like to think about, can this do multiple things and what can it do? Or is it just going to take up space in my cabinet?
So I'm going to ask you guys, what kinds of appliances do you own? Or are you guys newer into the game of looking for appliances?
We actually were the type who left the Instant Pot in the closet for like a year. We bought it on a Black Friday deal, and we're like, this is a great deal on this really popular appliance, and then just never got it out because it was intimidating.
They are a little bit, but read the instructions. They actually have, they recommend, and I would highly recommend that you use a water test first. So basically you put water in it, turn it on, let it pressurize, let it depressurize so that you can get a sense for how the process works. And that way you're not ruining food if you don't do it right or if something doesn't go right. But that really helps to do that water test first. But don't be super intimidated because it's a really handy tool to use for a lot of different things. Oh, cast iron. Yeah, Megan, we didn't even think about doing cast iron skillets. Yeah, we have whole classes on cast iron skillets too. Those are really great, really nice, high quality tools, I guess. Absolutely. Slow cookers, yes. Get those Instapots out. And if you do something with your Instapot, since a couple of you guys are saying you have an Instapot and maybe it's still in a box, maybe we can challenge them to use it in the next week and share with us next week what you did with it. So we'll throw that challenge out there. Air fryers are, air fryers are amazing. It's one of the best. Mine was a gift, thank goodness, but it was one of the best gifts I've gotten.
Absolutely.
Use it all the time.
Okay, well, if you guys have any additional questions, you can contact Megan or I directly. I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat box. It's mjaspers@purdue.edu. And we would also invite you guys to join us for our next round. Same time, same place, same Zoom link. Next week, we're going to be talking about quick dinners and ways that you can prepare things very quickly and under 20 minutes or less, and we're actually going to demonstrate how to do that next week and show you guys a meal that is really easy to do. So if there are no other questions, thank you all for joining us so much. We appreciate your time and hope you have a great week and look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.